Morning, councillors. Please be seated. Welcome to this full council of the 5th of March 2025. Can we please ensure all devices are muted? There will be a comfort break if necessary. However, I am hopeful that we can achieve the officer finishing time. Somebody's got their device. Can everyone please check their devices to prevent the feedback? Ask the clerk to take a roll call of those present online and note apologies.
Thanks, Provost. Good morning, everyone. We have apologies from Bailey Williamson. I'm not aware of any other apologies. And in terms of those members online, if we can confirm that they're present in the meeting, I believe we have Bailey.
Present, thank you.
And Bailey Brock.
Present.
Councillor James.
Morning, Scott.
Councillor McPherson. Sorry, apologies. Councillor Freshwater, I think, is present but has no sound, so we're just trying to sort that issue at the moment. And I think Councillor Watt is also online.
Yes, present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declaration of interest in respect of today's business? There are no declarations of interest. Oh, sorry. Councillor Duff, you have a...
Sorry, Provost, just taking us back to the roll call. Councillor Illingworth is running late due to his bus not being on time, but he should be here shortly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Noted. And I note that Councillor Freshwater now has sound as well. Okay, thank you. Members, item A1 is an urgent business item. I have accepted as convener this item under section 50B(4)(b) of the Local Government Scotland Act on the grounds that there was a material change in the topic, in the policy matter around the topic since the deadline for motions passed 2 weeks ago, and therefore I would invite Councillor Stephen Carr to move this urgent item, and I would ask committee to circulate it as well, please.
Thank you, Provost. I'm sure there was many of us in here that watched the events in the Oval Office last week in complete disbelief. The President and Vice President of the United States rounding on the President of Ukraine like two schoolyard bullies. President Zelensky has led his country from the front from the beginning, showing bravery to remain in Kiev when the missiles were striking and the Russian tanks were on the outskirts of the city. Bravery to visit the front lines and meet the soldiers in the trenches. Bravery to stand up for what is best for the Ukrainian people. As far from being a dictator as you can get. And during this time, he has proudly worn combat-style clothing to show solidarity with the frontline soldiers he has visited many times. This is something that all the world leaders know and respect. And yet in the Oval Office debacle, he was asked why he wasn't wearing a suit. This regimental patch I'm wearing today was given to me by my friend Victor, formerly a tour guide in Western Ukraine, but now serving in the Ukrainian army. He gave me this patch on my last trip to Ukraine as a thank you for the work that I do in Ukraine. And I wear it today with pride as a thank you for his bravery and the sacrifices he is making for the defence of his country. It's not the clothes that defines the man, it's his actions. And I'm happy to leave my suit at home today to show my solidarity with the Ukrainian soldiers in the same way that President Zelensky does. What is very worrying, though, is that within 2 days of the meeting in the Oval Office, the United States announces that it is withdrawing military support for Ukraine with immediate effect. Withdrawing supplies of the Patriot defence systems used to protect civilians within Ukrainian cities from the constant threat of Russian missiles. Ukrainians are fiercely proud of their country. Ukrainian men and women are fighting like lions on the front lines to defend the sovereign integrity of the country. They are brave beyond imagination in the face of ruthless Russian aggression, but they need that military support. And to threaten to remove that support because you don't get your way is behaviour that is reprehensible. Within Perth and Kinross, we have hundreds of displaced Ukrainians that we have welcomed and provided a safe haven. Many of the Ukrainian women here have husbands and sons fighting on the front lines. We can't imagine the constant worry that they have to go through on a daily basis, and then they hear of a missile strike on a city where they have family and friends. Fraught with worry as they phone round trying to find out where the strike hit and have their loved ones been injured or killed. To then hear someone who is meant to be an ally threatening to take away the military support that their husbands or sons need and the defence systems that are protecting their friends and family is a betrayal of the highest order. Whilst we can't do anything directly about the threats around withdrawing military aid, we can let those that we have welcomed to Perth and Kinross know that we will continue to support them, that we will continue to provide a safe haven for them, and that we will continue to ask those in government that can influence such matters that they continue to do the same. Slava Ukraini. I'm happy to move this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. I'd now like to invite Bailey Ahern to second.
Thank you, Provost. This last week has changed the world, probably forever. We have no idea what the future will look like, and we as a council are not going to make any difference to world politics. But what we can do is support Ukraine and the Ukrainian families in Perth and Kinross. This motion affirms what we have said in this chamber in the past, that we support Ukraine and the families that have chose to settle here in Perth and Kinross. It also supports and appreciates the work done by our officers in that task. Our community stepped up and worked very quickly 3 years ago to take in families and provide humanitarian support and security for them. An example is the work of the Maurice Leslie operation in Errol, which has just dispatched its 97th articulated lorry load to that country, and the working on the 98th lorry load as we talk, as well as other groups including Tash for Ukraine. Who 3 years ago would have thought that these families would still be here years later and that the war would still be raging on in their country? Unfortunately, certain individuals and recent events have made the world a more uncertain place, and we must support those that become victims of events outside of their control. I hope Councillor Carr has a safe and meaningful time in his upcoming visit to Ukraine. This motion shows Ukrainian families in Perth and Kinross that we continue to stand by them. I'm happy to second this motion.
Thank you, Bailey Ahern. Councillor Peter Barrett.
Provost, councillors, I think as Councillor Carr said, we were all shocked, outraged and ashamed by events in Washington last Friday from the leader of the so-called leader of the free world of a nation once regarded as the defender of Western democracy and champion of democratic values. His treatment of another president whose country has been invaded by Russia was staggering. Even by the low bar on international relations and diplomacy that Donald Trump and Vice President Vance have set, their casual ripping up of relationships with European nations and between US and Canada in favour of alignment with Russia, Friday's meeting in the Oval Office plumbed new and dangerous levels. Tuesday morning's news that Trump had cancelled all financial and military aid, including shipments previously agreed by the Biden administration, must have been music to Putin's ears, along with the lack of a united response from European leaders. But Trump's action is tantamount to forcing capitulation upon Ukraine and rewarding invasion and aggression by Russia with Ukraine territory. Maybe some territory was always going to be a part of it, the end of war in Ukraine, but Putin didn't even have to bluff for Trump to throw in all the cards that the US held and then Ukraine to the dogs. Yesterday, I attended a workshop at Tulloch Primary School with their P7 class led by the Anne Frank Foundation, along with councillors Rebeck and Massey. It was heartening to hear The children develop messages of kindness from one human being to another, and the bravery required to protect the vulnerable. The pupils heard the words of Otto Frank, Anne Frank's father and survivor of the Holocaust. He said, "We cannot change what happened anymore. The only thing we can do is learn from the past and to realise what discrimination and persecution of innocent people means. I believe that it's everyone's responsibility to fight prejudice." So whether it's in Gaza or Ukraine, Trump has never bothered to learn what persecution of innocent people means, but he knows all about the bottom line, and he and Vance have the brass neck and total lack of shame in admitting it. Vance has adopted the stance of a mafia protection racketeer when he put the US position in a nutshell, saying, if you want real security guarantees, if you want to actually ensure that Vladimir Putin does not invade Ukraine again, the very best security guarantee is to give Americans economic upside in the future of Ukraine. Provost, if we want genuine security and not the Trump-Vance definition, then we need strength in numbers through European and international solidarity with mutual defence and cooperation. Domestically, we need strengthening of our armed forces, and sadly that is the reality that we now face. And I think Keir Starmer is providing leadership on that. Our UK Lib Dem leader Ed Davey has signalled where we can go further with the establishment of a new rearmament bank and the seizure of Russian assets to fund Ukraine's defence. He's urged the Prime Minister to engage with European allies on these initiatives, emphasising the need for concrete financial and military support for Ukraine in this urgent time of need. Promised, I'm grateful to Councillor Carr for bringing forward this emergency motion. The Liberal Democrat group will be supporting it unanimously, as I hope will the whole of the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Tom McEwen. Councillor Barrett, can you switch your microphone off, please?
Apologies, Provost.
Only go when it's green. Like everybody else, I watched live the stuff that went on in the Oval Office, and Councillor Barrett has spoken about that. But one thing that came to me on my own Facebook page was one of the dominant Ukrainians within my community posted an advert from 1980 for a march in Edinburgh to support Ukraine against the activities at that time that Russia was doing. And I think that demonstrates that this isn't a one-stop event. This is a continuous process by Russia to try and take over Ukraine. It wants its resources, it wants its minerals, and this won't go away. So therefore, that really implies to us that the move to peace is really important, and the move to ensure that Putin can't then attack 5 years down the line once he's rebuilt his arsenal and trained more soldiers, then that defence and that peace needs to be there. And I can see why the Ukrainians are pushing so hard to have that defence of their own country. Peace negotiations are always contentious, and they're always really worrying for the residents of the countries involved. For me, these should be done behind closed doors, not in the Oval Office in front of the media. And that would probably negate some of the worry and the concern that people who are displaced from Ukraine have at this moment. As a council and as convener of the Housing Committee, I want to reaffirm my support for the Ukrainians who are living in Perth and Kinross. We have, the numbers I have are 332 Ukrainians, 107 with hosts, elective hosts, 225 tenants of our own council. That's in 95 different properties. So, we have a quite substantial, for a council our size, group of Ukrainians that we are supporting in our communities. And what I want to say to them is that, we are with you, we support you, and we are here to help you. And I'd like to thank all our officers who actually work supporting the Ukrainians in our community at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Deputy Provost.
Thank you very much. Up until about 1990, we thought we lived in a dangerous and unstable world. But the Cold War had its own set of rules, which by and large were followed. And I think we can look back at that time now as being relatively stable compared with where we are now. For perhaps 30 years, we've lived in a world that we thought was better and stable and moving forwards. But I was living in Estonia in 1999 when Putin first came to power in Russia, and the Estonian commentary at that time was, "Nothing good will come of this." And sadly, they've been proved right from the start. We're going to have to be paying more in our security insurance premiums going forward, as Peter Barrett has so rightly said, I believe. And although we're spared many of its day-to-day horrors, we should be under no illusion, I believe, if we believe in our Western democracies, that the front line in Ukraine is our front line as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Provost. I'll be very brief here. What I would like to say is that I am in constant contact with my friend Sergei Boltacha, who you all remember has been a professional footballer with St Johnstone. He was one of the best players that I think we played for St Johnstone. His family are still in Kiev and refuse to leave, and he is obviously in constant contact with them. His hometown of Mariupol was completely flattened, and I will pass on all the thoughts we have with this motion to him, and he will be most appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Carr, do you wish to sum up?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. I think obviously the voices across the chamber reflect our ongoing solidarity here in Perth and Kinross with our Ukrainian friends, both living here and those in Ukraine. And I will make sure that our message of solidarity is conveyed to our twin city of Nikopol as well, who I know will be appreciative of the ongoing support demonstrated by the council. Members, can we agree the urgent motion? Thank you.
Agreed.
Members, item 3 is the minute of the previous meeting. Can we agree the minute of the council meeting of the 4th of December 2024? Good, thank you. Can I invite Councillor Duff just to make a comment on the minute?
Thank you, Provost. Members will be aware that at the last meeting we deferred a motion on major energy development applications. Since then, we've had the chance to meet with officers and discuss these. We looked at what was currently available and agreed that with some further development we could provide the real-time information on each of the types of major energy development plan and applications which are referred to in that motion. We've also asked officers to look at ways to provide training for community councillors in this specific area. And finally, Provost, we've requested that elected members receive a briefing on major energy development applications, how these are processed by the Energy Consents Unit and what can be done to challenge such proposals. And as a result, I can confirm that we now withdraw the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Members, item 4 is the outstanding business statement. Are there any questions on the outstanding business statement? If there are no questions on the outstanding business statement, can we note the outstanding business statement and agree to remove completed actions from the outstanding business statement? Thank you. Members, item 5 is the Treasury and Investment Strategy and Prudential Indicators 2025 to 26 to 2030-31. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for that snappy title. And Scott Walker, the Strategic Lead for Finance and Business Support, is going to introduce the report.
Thank you, Provost, and good morning, councillors. This report sets out the Treasury and Investment Strategy and Prudential Indicators for financial years 25-26 through to 30-31. Consideration of this strategy today meets 3 requirements. Firstly, it is a requirement of the Council's own approved Treasury management practices. Secondly, it is a requirement of the SITFA Code of Practice for Treasury Management. And thirdly, the investment strategy is also a requirement of the Scottish Investment Regulations 2010. The investment strategy details the permitted investments of the Council and outlines the risks associated with the expected investment activities. For the avoidance of doubt, the information contained in this report today does not include the impact of the final adjustments to the capital budget approved by Council last week. Section 4 provides an update on the Council's Treasury position as at the 10th of February. At that time, we had net debt of £777.2 million at an average interest rate of 3.1%. This section also includes the projected borrowing requirement of £723.9 million over the next 6 years of the approved capital budget for both the general fund and the housing revenue account. Within section 5, we provide some commentary on the prospect for interest rates. We still anticipate interest rates to fall, but not at the pace of previous updates. This is of particular significance given the level of borrowing required by the Council over this period. With this in mind, it may remain more advantageous to undertake short-term borrowing until longer-term rates show signs of reducing to levels more in line with our assumptions. Current forecasts indicate that short-term borrowing will be less expensive than longer-term borrowing over the next few years. However, borrowing over the longer term does provide more certainty and reduces the refinancing risk in future years. This approach will be kept under review, and this is further underlined in section 6, where we reaffirm our risk-aware treasury strategy. As I said earlier, the submission of an annual investment strategy is a requirement of the Local Government Investment Scotland Regulations 2010, and this is covered in section 7. There are no proposals to make changes to permitted investments for 25-26, and this is confirmed in paragraph 7.2. The current limits ensure that the Council maintains sufficient liquidity and a spread of investments, whilst the specific counterparty list is reviewed continuously in light of credit rating changes and other market information. Section 7 also sets out the investment types that we will use in 25-26, including money market funds, bank deposits on instant access or notice terms, fixed deposits with banks, and other local authority lending. Section 8 provides an update on investment properties with the annual property investment strategy for 25-26 set out in Appendix 4. Section 9 provides information on debt rescheduling. Under current circumstances, it is unlikely that we will make use of this facility, as the costs are likely to be prohibitively expensive and unlikely to generate savings. Section 10 provides information on the Prudential Code. Importantly, the confirmation by Council last week that we will ring-fence 1.25% of Council tax income each year from 25-26 ensures the Council's capital programme remains affordable, sustainable and prudent. All of the prudential indicators included in Section 11 and Appendix 5 comply with the SIPFA Code of Practice for Treasury Management. The setting of an appropriate Treasury Management strategy is essential in ensuring that the Council is not exposed to undue risks and costs. The strategy outlined in this report is designed to ensure that the Council achieves the best possible returns on its borrowings and investments, while seeking to minimise risk in light of prevailing and forecast market conditions. Finally, in Section 11, we're seeking approval to increase the maximum level of external borrowing or authorised limit. To reflect recent decisions, we now need to increase this from £1.28 billion to £1.3 billion, which should cover the peak of the Council's debt over the 6-year programme. This limit does include some extra capacity and provides some flexibility over the timing of new borrowing. This revised limit is also consistent with the funding strategy for our capital plans, our loans fund estimates and the medium-term financial plan. John Jennings is online and we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Are there any questions for Mr. Walker? Councillor Stuart Donaldson, you have a question.
This is my one chance in the year to actually ask questions about Treasury matters and chairing Finance and Resources. There's two questions I do want to ask. One about the property portfolio, but I'll do that later. But first of all, on Treasury, and thanks, by the way, Scott and John Jennings, and also Serge Moron for this report. It's on interest rates because it's about the cost of money. It's about the time value of money. And I think it really would be probably John Jennings. Our advisors are Link Asset Services. To what extent are the projections, the forecasts made, and they are forecasts, those specifically of Link? I don't know exactly what they have internally in terms of their own research department, or to what extent is this a broad consensus of market views that they're reflecting from economic institutes, banks, brokers, and economists therein?
So I'll start and maybe John can jump in. We meet regularly with Link in terms of their assumptions, and one of the things they bring to the table is their own assumptions alongside other groups, other organisations, so we understand where they sit in terms of the benchmarking. But John, is there anything you want to add in terms of your regular contact with Link?
Yeah, the forecast that's included in the report is purely Link's own forecast. That's based on their research and analysis of where the markets are in the interest rate environment. They do produce other forecasts, provide other forecasts from other institutions, but the one in the report is purely Link's own one.
John, thanks. I think it matters because it's, it is projecting several falls in interest rates up until December 2026 and over quite a period of time. Could I just ask though, for 25-26 to end of March next year, the figure we have borrowing requirement is 203.3 million. In terms of the financing of that, how much do you anticipate will be required to be financed in the first half of the period and how much towards the second half? What I'm driving at is the extent to which, what may be possibly the time that we can actually do this with 30, 50-year funds from PWLB, is the one thing that does give you, has happened, with the move you made a few years back, is it gives you certainty and it gives you, greater maturity of the debt. John, I think, or Scott.
So I was just going to add that obviously we do it in terms of our cash flow projections. But John, what is our cash flow saying for the first 6 months?
Well, the first 6 months of the year tend to be more positive in terms of cash flow. So I would, off the top of my head, I would reckon 2/3 of our borrowing would be in the second half of the year. The other thing to take into account is that once we get into April, the local authority borrowing market tends to settle down to more reasonable rates. So it might be we do month-to-month very short-term borrowing to defer the longer term until later in the year when rates are more favourable. So that's another option we can look at going forward as interest rates settle. But I would think borrowing in the 30-year period is probably 2 or 3 years down the line. We're not really forecast to be getting good value in that period in that time period.
Okay, thanks. I'm asking the question basically to get the broad direction of travel, and clearly circumstances can alter. But thanks very much. And if I can, probably I'll come back in a minute to ask about the commercial property portfolio.
Just want to finish the now while you're on your roll. If you just want to finish the now, you can.
Could I just then, on the page 34, okay, we show there the breakdown of the commercial property units. We're projecting commercial income for the 25-26 of 1.9 million. Could I just ask, and Serge is at the rostrum, how does that break down in terms of income, Serge, between retail, office and commercial, and industrial? And I have one supplementary, and that'll be me.
Good morning, Councillor Donaldson. Thank you for your question. I don't have the specific breakdown in terms of the income for each category, but I think in terms of the numbers and the volume, the ground leases will be the majority of the income, from that portfolio. I think what we can do in the future is to show the breakdown per income and potentially the trend between one year to another to give you the more fuller information about that portfolio.
One quick follow-up, and that's me. So obviously at budget last week, we agreed on a significant expansion of our commercial property activities in terms of industrial units, and with an additional 77.5 million in new units to add to the ones that we're refurbishing and looking after just now. To what extent will that shift the balance within the portfolio between retail, office, and also in terms of value and industrial?
So in terms of numbers, obviously the numbers for the industrial properties will increase, and the income related, to that portfolio will also increase. However, we are reviewing actively the ground leases, so we're doing leases reviews, and this is also pushing the income from the ground leases up. So there will be a both increase on the ground leases income and on the industrial properties portfolio as well. So overall, it may not be as as a difference in between the two, but there will be a change, and I think it will be important to show that change in the future reports, so you have full visibility on these changes.
Thank you. Bailey Ahern.
Thank you very much. Do we have any investments in the US dollar? And with the recent decline in the dollar, which is not likely to change much, are we going to move away from it?
So, John will get me right, but we don't invest in currencies. We invest with institutions. John, can you confirm that?
That's correct. All our investments, our permitted investments, are in UK sterling, with no foreign currency transactions.
Okay, thank you. Bailey.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you for the report. Just wanted to really pull a little further on the thread that Councillor Donaldson was pulling on regarding the, I guess, what I might call the perils of trying to estimate interest rates and base rates in advance. We all know that those come with certain caveats, but my specific question is, if any of us goes in for a normal domestic homeowner mortgage, there's now those sort of stress tests performed to the extent that the bank will want to make sure we can still afford our repayments if interest rates go up by X number of percentage points. I know they won't be mandatory for a local authority, but do we as a council go through a similar modelling exercise? So, for example, have we modelled and made sure things are still fine if the interest rates do go higher or don't drop at the rate that we're forecasting in this report? Thank you.
So we are regularly updating our assumptions in terms of our borrowing rates. John has got a very big spreadsheet that models all of the various interest rate changes. We model through the 2070 80s in terms of our capital fund projections, and it's sensitive to individual movements based on the updates we get from Link, asset services, etc. John, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to say that's correct. We modelled it well in advance. We do have what ifs built into it, so we can manipulate the interest rates to see the impact. But in the overall loans fund as a whole, we're looking at historic debt, which we've got in the books, which is fixed and certain. So the element of going forward, it is kind of diluted in terms of its impact. And as far as the assessment criteria with PWL, we self-certify that we could afford it, and there's no issues there.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Provost, and thank you, Mr. Walker, for the report. When you were summarising the report itself, you mentioned when we were talking about switching from short-term borrowing to long-term, a refinancing risk. And I just wondered if you could expand on what that meant. Is that a problem with interest rates, or is there more risk involved?
So basically, we're looking at short-term money just now. So we get some certainty over the next 3 to 5 years. There is a risk that in 5 years' time that the rates are still not where we need them to be, and we pay a premium for that. So that's the risk that we lose out on by not having the 30, 40, 50-year lock-ins that we would ideally like at the rates we would like.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Provost. I'll actually withdraw the question because Bailey basically asked it and you answered it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. There doesn't seem to be any further questions I can see, so Mr. Walker, you may step down. Council Leader, would you like to move a motion?
Thank you, Provost. Councillors, a requirement of SIPFA's Code of Practice for Treasury Management is that our annual Treasury and investment strategy is approved by full Council. The consideration of this strategy today fulfils that requirement. Our Chief Finance Officer has provided elected members with an update on the specific contents of this report. On that basis, you may be pleased to hear that I will keep my remarks brief. Specifically, we are asked to approve our 6-year Treasury strategy to 2030-2031, approve the permitted investments and investment strategy for 25-26, approve our prudential investment strategy again for 25-26, also approve the prudential factors for 2025-26 to 2030-31, and approve an increase in the Council's authorised limit for borrowing to 1.3 billion. Provost, just last week the Council confirmed its earlier decision to be proactive in terms of supporting the capital budget by committing 1.25% of future council tax income each year to increasing our loan charges budget from 25-26. We are both supporting the existing programme and increasing investment capacity in the future. With the results of this deliberate strategy for funding our current and future investment plans reflected in the report before us today, I welcome confirmation that even with such an ambitious capital investment programme, our capital budget remains affordable, sustainable and prudent. I'm happy to move this report.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Mr. Deputy Leader to second.
Thank you, Provost. I shall keep my comments even more brief. Happy to second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Leader. Are there any comments on the paper? There are no comments on the paper. Can we agree the report? Thank you very much. Members, item 6 is the Perth Kinross Local Development Plan 3 evidence report, and I'm going to invite Serge Marone, Strategic Lead for Economy, Planning and Development, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Provost. This report presents Perth and Kinross Local Development Plan 3 evidence report. The full evidence report is attached as Appendix 1. The scope and content of the evidence report has been guided by the legislation and the Scottish Government's local development planning guidance. It is important to stress that it is a technical step in the process, and members are not asked at that stage to consider any policy changes or the plan itself. This will come later in the process. A briefing session has been held with elected members last Monday to go over the report, and following feedback, a series of workshops with elected members will take place to continue to keep them engaged in the process following consideration of the evidence report. The structure of the evidence report is detailed in paragraph 4.4. The report includes a profile of the Perth and Kinross area, information on participation and engagement, which is summarised in paragraph 4.9, Perth and Kinross LDP2 monitoring, how and what evidence has been gathered, and gaps and uncertainties, key issues and formal disputes, which are summarised in paragraphs 4.5 to 4.8. Chapter 5 in the full report provides more details on evidence which is disputed or uncertain. Paragraph 4.8 summarized key issues arising from the evidence, with more details provided in Chapter 6 in the full report. The report also includes a series of appendix in relation to sustainable places, livable places, homes, infrastructure and transportation, and productive places, as well as mapping of policies and proposed site appraisal template. The Council is asked to approve the LDP3 evidence report and delegates authority to the Strategic Lead Economy, Development and Planning to submit it to the Scottish Minister, who will appoint a reporter for review. The Council is also asked to delegate authority to the Strategic Lead Economy, Development and Planning to make any necessary minor changes or updates to the evidence report thereafter prior to submission to the Scottish Minister. I would like to thank the team who has worked very hard to produce the report. Brenda Murray, Local Development Team Leader, and Nicola Zorowski, Place-Based Strategies Manager and Chief Planning Officer. And most of the team are in person or in teams, and we are happy to answer any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marone. Are there any questions? Might be about to get off very lightly here. If Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, Provost. Thank you for the report, Mr. Rowan. And thanks also for the briefing that we had on Monday morning. So I just wanted to follow up on a point from that briefing and just ask about the status of not just the Scoonan District local place plan, but all of the local place plans currently in preparation, and when, in terms of timeline, those could be included in either the evidence report or registered as local place plans and taken into consideration for the LDP3.
In relation to the local place plans, you'll see the evidence report contains what we've had registered. No, sorry, no, wipe that. What we've had interest noted in. We haven't had any registered yet. We have had one from Scoonan Community Council, which needs to meet certain requirements of the legislation before we can register it. In terms of the evidence report, we won't make any changes to it as such once it's submitted to the Gateway, unless we're recommended to do that and the evidence isn't deemed sufficient. The local place plans we can accept at any time throughout the preparation of the LDP, and we have been in discussions with several community groups looking to prepare them so far, and are trying to stress that the sooner they are before us, the more time we have to consider them in the plan preparation process. There'll be other information submitted to us through a call for sites exercise, and also call for ideas, which is giving other people the opportunity to let us know their thoughts and collaborate with us on the preparation of the plan. So really, our advice to the communities that we're speaking with are to, submit to us as soon as they can. We've got between now and the end of the year, in terms of our timetable set out in the development plan scheme, to complete the proposed plan. So I would say, time is of the essence for all involved in the process. But yeah, I mean, we've been conscious to keep a dialogue going with groups and try and keep them up to date on the process. I think the deadline that's set on our website in relation to local place plans is a requirement in legislation that there is one, but it doesn't make it helpful through the process when timescales can move, and there is that background of a local place plan can come to us at any time. So it's really all about how much time we have to actually take it into consideration. And I would say local place plans themselves, whilst we register them, we don't consider in registering the content. So we're not saying we agree with what the community has come up with. That's for the collaborative preparation process for the plan.
Thanks, Provost. A different question. In August 2018, when Council was considering LDP3 for submission, there was an agreement by Council, I think by the largest majority in the last Council term, accepting any budget motions, an agreement that there would be an upper limit on site capacity ranges. So that was included in LDP3 that was submitted to the Scottish Government, but overturned by the reporter for a lack of evidence for that. And I just wondered what degree of evidence or what engagement there would be required in order to substantiate a maximum site capacity ranges, a maximum site capacity range in the next version of the LDP.
Okay, that issue I think is one that we need to discuss further through the member workshop sessions. In terms of site numbers, it's all to do with design and layout at the end of the day. And I think if we set a maximum limit and say it cannot be breached, if an acceptable design comes forward, then we have to move forward with that. It's I would say, a nigh on impossible task to do what is being requested. It's about placemaking principles. When we're preparing the plan, we do try and give an estimate of what we think those numbers are likely to be, and we look at the constraints in terms of the development of the site, and are there any abnormal costs, areas, parts of the site that might have some issues regard to flooding, where landscaping is required, which all reduces the developable area. But it is very much then, once the site is allocated, over to the developers to come up with a design and layout. So there is a variance there in terms of what the final number will be. This plan, we do have to do a bit more in terms of master planning and site briefs. So that can provide, potentially more, guidance in that area. But again, it won't be able to determine the maximum limit. That comes through the planning application process. So I know that's not what you want to hear. But yeah, as I say, I think, we can look at that further through workshop discussions.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks for that. And I look, no, it wasn't what I wanted to hear, but I do look forward to having the discussion as you suggest. So thanks for that. The final topic is on, I'm conscious that planning officers are going to bring forward shortly a proposed policy to supplement the local development plan on renewable and battery storage developments. And I just wondered, having looked at the wording in the evidence report around issues such as renewable energy, net zero and whatnot, I just wondered whether there was any potential conflict being created between bringing forward a policy now and the eventual whether there would eventually be a policy related to these issues in LDP 3.
In terms of the guidance, which will come to you later, it's not looking to establish policy. It's basically to supplement the policy. So we will provide further information around battery storage in particular. So it's really to give a bit more guidance as to what we're looking for applications that when they come in. So it'll be guidance for people submitting, as well as a bit more guidance for development management when they're determining applications. So it's not the policy, it's just more guidance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to Serge and Brenda. You may return to your seats, and I'll invite the Deputy Leader to move the motion.
Thank you, Provost. This report presents the Perth and Kinross Local Development Plan evidence report, marking a significant technical milestone in the development of this plan. This document is one of the most crucial that the Council will consider during its current tenure, as it will impact our people and places both during the plan's duration and beyond. However, at this stage, we are not asked to consider any policy changes or the plan itself. Given the impact of LDP3, it is essential that it is based on robust and sufficient evidence and supported by a large majority of stakeholders. Engaging people, businesses and communities in this journey is vital. I am particularly pleased with the Big Place conversation, which facilitated extensive and successful local engagement over a 9-month period using the Place Standard tool. I'd like to extend my gratitude to the officers for their immense effort and commitment to produce this massive evidence report. However, the process is far from complete, and we've heard questions today that need to be explored further for sure. This evidence report will need to be submitted to Scottish ministers for the gate check. Following their assessment, we will all have the opportunity to fully engage in the development of LDP3 and considering the National Planning Framework 4. We must strive to make LDP3 the best it can be to achieve our vision for a Perth and Kinross where everyone lives well, free from poverty and inequality. I move the paper for your approval and would ask Councillor Massey, the convener of the Planning and Placemaking Committee, to second. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Provost. I'd like to echo the Deputy Leader and express my gratitude to everyone involved in bringing this comprehensive report to the Chamber. As we navigate the challenges of growth, sustainability and community well-being, this report will guide us, ensuring that our collective vision for Perth and Kinross is both inclusive and effective. The significance of the Local Development Plan evidence report and the vital input we receive from our communities through their local place plans cannot be overemphasised. It is essential to engage with the voices of our community during the process, and I encourage everyone to actively participate in discussions, share experiences and provide feedback to help us shape the future of our Perth and Kinross. Involvement from communities and community councils enriches our understanding of the local area. By listening to their experiences, insights and local knowledge and learning from their previous local place plans, we can adopt best practices and avoid any pitfalls. Community input is invaluable. After all, LDP3 is about creating spaces that reflect our identity, our values and our priorities. The importance of the evidence report lies in its comprehensive approach to gathering and analysing data relevant to Perth and Kinross. But it is not a collection of data and statistics. It is the foundation. It is not only, it should have said, it is not only a collection of data and statistics, it is the foundation upon which we will build our shared vision for a sustainable development and community resilience. The report encompasses a wide range of topics: demographics, housing, employment, environmental considerations and infrastructure assessments. And by presenting this information in a coherent and accessible manner, the evidence report equips us with the insights needed to make informed strategic choices about the kind of future we want for Perth and Kinross. This document fosters transparency and accountability in the planning process. By making the data available to the public, we will enable our residents to understand the rationale behind council decisions, encouraging active participation from the community. This inclusivity is vital for building trust and consensus among the stakeholders, ensuring that the voices of the residents, businesses and organisations are heard and considered. The collaborative nature of the report signifies our commitment to working alongside different sectors of society, from government, community groups and private enterprises. This partnership approach allows us to harness a diverse range of perspectives and expertise, which will lead to better solutions for the planning challenges ahead. One of the primary functions of the evidence report is to ensure that our local development plan is grounded in accurate and current information. But as we are all aware, the needs of our communities are constantly changing. However, by trusting in solid evidence, we can recognise both current and emerging trends, enabling proactive planning rather than reactive planning. This approach will help us tackle issues such as housing affordability, infrastructure requirements and environmental sustainability, ensuring that Perth Kinross not only meets the needs of the current residents, but also remains appealing to future generations. The Perth Kinross Evidence Report for LDP3 is a crucial resource that will steer us towards a sustainable and thriving future. By basing our decisions on evidence gathered through consultation and encouraging community involvement, we will ensure that Perth Kinross continues to be a place where everyone can live, work and thrive. The importance of this report cannot be overstated. It aims to create cohesive and thriving neighbourhoods, fostering a sense of belonging for every resident and ensuring that our local resources are used effectively. LDP3 will build upon previous plans, considering new insights and emerging needs, and lay out a proactive framework for future development. And our communities will play an integral role in shaping this vision and priorities articulated in LDP3. It's through your input that we can create a local development plan that resonates with our collective identity and future. This evidence report is not merely a document, it represents our shared aspirations, challenges and opportunities as a community. It has been written through consultation with residents, stakeholders and various interest groups, making it a truly collaborative effort. This report is a roadmap for the future. Sorry, apologies. Easier if I go over to this. This report is a roadmap for the future, informed by the experiences of the past and built on the input from our local communities, which will create a vibrant, sustainable and inclusive Perth Kinross. Thank you. I'm pleased to second the report.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. Bailey McLaren with the first comment.
Thank you, Provost. I will be brief. It's really just to express my thanks to all involved and the officers who are no longer with us who have had input into this. I realise it's been a time-consuming report to bring forward, and a lot of love has gone into it. So I do appreciate all that's gone into it. I do look forward to the member workshops where I can continue my rural conversations. But just at this point, I'd like to thank everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Provost. I thought the comments from Councillor Massey were well made. And I'm encouraged that more and more communities are getting involved in the LDP process. I would ask that we learn lessons from LDP2 in as much as certainly in Kinrossshire, one of the groups who did not get involved in the planning process was their local health board, and local GPs have told me that they weren't asked their views on the housing numbers and if they were able to cope. And I think let's try and have a joined up government of local government where we all contribute to where we're going. And I'd also ask that when we agree the new LDP3, that it is agreed by this council as a way forward, and that when housing sites become available and start to be developed, we don't have the sticky fingers of the Scottish Government reporter coming in and substantially increasing the housing numbers that are allocated to a site, because that puts a lot of pressure on local services that we were not expecting and are unable to satisfy. So I would ask that I think it's a good. I'm excited about the new local development plan, but I would ask that we try and learn lessons from what happened in LDP2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Provost. Just wanted to thank the officers for this report. Obviously, there's an immense amount of work that is going into producing these 1,100 or thereabout pages today. There's much to do, but this is a good start, and I look forward to working with officers to develop LDP3 going forward. One of the interesting things about the report is that some of the information and statistics that it produces for us, not just in terms of LDP3, but in terms of other areas of council work. And for example, table 9 on page 83, it's interesting to see that 10.4% of our employees' jobs are still paid below living wage, so presumably mostly on minimum wage, for instance, and also that only 14% of our premises have access to full fibre broadband. So I think if we're serious about improving economic growth within Perth and Kinross, I think the report also holds a lot of information for us to drill down into and to look at and to try and resolve going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Collins-Stewart.
Thank you, Provost. Planning applications are one of the most contentious issues that elected members regularly have to deal with from residents and communities. I don't think it was until I was standing for election in 2017 that I realised the importance of the local development plan, which was being drafted at that time. So I would really echo, I think, what Councillor Massey and Councillor Robertson said about the importance of getting this right and learning lessons from the what Councillor Robertson said about learning lessons from the past, particularly about housing numbers and the involvement of community planning partners. Councillor Robertson was specifically referring to the health board, but in making sure that we've got the right developments in the right place and that they're happening synchronously at the right time. Councillor Massey was talking about the involvement of communities, and it's absolutely key that communities get involved early enough that their views and voices can be heard in preparing the next version of the local development plan, LDP3. And I look forward to those communities who've registered an interest bringing forward their local police plans and other communities as well. Certainly I attended, I see Mr Sosa at the back there, who facilitated a couple of the big place conversation events that I attended, and I think they were really appreciated by the community. So thanks for everybody who was organising big place conversation meetings. But it is important that there's ongoing engagement from both communities and from elected members, and I welcome the prospect of the workshops going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Liz Barrett.
Thank you, Provost. I found the briefing to councillors on Monday was very helpful and noted that the reporter will be focusing on, or is likely to focus on, the areas of dispute going forward. I also look forward to the workshop sessions with councillors and the involvement of our communities in developing LDP3. And I'd just like to thank Brenda Murray and all of the team in planning and housing, but also beyond, who've worked on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McCall, final comment.
Thank you, Provost. I just really wanted to pick up on the point that Councillor Robertson made about the engagement of the Health Board. My understanding is that the Health Board had been invited to participate but didn't. However, that is something I think that is a well-made point. I think we should also engage with our local health and social care partnership. And I think also since LDP2, the engagement with health and social care partnership, particularly in aspects of housing and lived environment for our citizens, has improved greatly. So I would like to think that officers will continue that engagement as part of the LDP3. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Drysdale, would you like to sum up?
Just to say that I'm very much listening to the comments that have been made in the chamber this morning, and Councillor Stewart's questions in terms of the range of property numbers in any particular development. We need to find a solution to that, and I'll certainly be speaking to officers about that, and with a view to taking that particular issue forward. And just further to Councillor McCall's comments there as well, it's essential that NHS, Tayside, Health and Social Care Partnership and other appropriate agencies do contribute to the development of this plan, because it's essential that we do not just develop sites with properties with populations that will move into these sites, but where services are unable to cope with any increased level of demand. That's the key point, I think. So that's all I'd like to say, Provost. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Drysdale. Members will be happy to agree the report. Thank you. Members, item 7 updates to the scheme of administration. Are we happy to agree the proposed changes to the scheme of administration as set out on the agenda? Thank you. Sorry, yes, question, Bailey Ahern.
Yeah, the scheme of administration says that about determining applications for licenses. Does that mean we're no longer able to determine any applications regarding gambling? Either occasional or...
Mrs. Simpson.
It's the particular reference under that particular statutory section. I don't know the detail of it, but I can get that back clarified for you. It's just housekeeping in terms of a legislative change. I can get you more detail. I'm sorry. I can get you more detail on that and circulate it in terms of what that actually means. But that's the change that needs to be made to the actual scheme.
Okay, because I think it makes reference as well to the Gambling Act, or there's reference to the Gambling Act 2011 and 2014 as well, especially which covers remote gambling.
Okay, subject to that being circulated to yourself, are we happy to agree the proposed changes to the scheme of administration? Thank you. Members, item 8, appointments to working groups and outside bodies. Are we happy to agree the following changes? Councillor Colin Stewart replace Provost Anna McDade on the Affordable Housing Member Officer Working Group. Agreed. Bailey Claire McLaren to replace Councillor Sheila McCall as representative on Friends of Cognac Association. Agreed. Councillor Stuart Donaldson to replace Councillor Sheila McCall as the Perth Kinross representative on the Scotland Excel Joint Committee. Agreed. Councillor Ken Harvey to replace Councillor Stephen Carr as one of the council representatives on the Perth and Kinross Sports Council. Agreed. There is a proposal to reduce the number of elected members on the Employees Joint Consultative Committee from 4 to 3. Councillor McCall, you wish to comment on this?
I do, Provost. Thank you very much indeed. I think it's regrettable that we're not able to nominate sufficient councillors from this chamber to sit on this committee. It's where the trade union representatives are there from both the teaching and the rest of the staff representatives are there. It also deals with health and safety matters across all of our working environments. And in fact, when the health and safety executive found an issue at one of our recycling centres, they were able to, that came before that committee. So I think it has perhaps, it's quite an important committee, and particularly in terms of industrial relations and seeing how these goes. I know that the former councillor Brian Leishman made great contributions to that committee, and I think it is regrettable that we're unable to find an alternative. I will take this proposal back to the committee, if I may. I'm sure that they will agree with the mood of council, but I just want to express my disappointment that of the councillors across this chamber that we can't find one other member to sit in this committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McCall. Councillor Duff.
Just want to support Councillor McCall's comments there. I think this is the second time in recent months where we've had proposals to reduce committee membership rather than appoint members to committees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duff. Noting that Councillor McCall is going to take that proposal back to the Employees Joint Consultative Committee, are Council content to support that in the meantime? Councillor Rebeck, you also wish to come in.
Yeah, apologies, Provost. I just kind of stuck that one in the last minute there, sorry. But I think it is important as one of the members that sits on this particular committee with Councillor McCall, just to agree with her. I think this is it's a valuable conduit between staff on the ground and our understanding as elected members of how our staff feel about the way the council's operating. I think it is an important committee, and I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is Council content with that proposal in principle? Yes, agreed. Okay, thank you. Members, item 9 is elected member briefing notes. Council is asked to note the briefing notes that have been issued to members since the last council on the 4th of December 2024 as set out in the agenda. Noted. Thank you. Members, that concludes business for today. Thank you very much for your time. Councillor Forbes, you have a question.
Sorry, Provost, just a very quick one. I promise. It's regarding the elected members' briefing notes. I've noticed a couple of them have been redacted, as in they're on the list on the council's website, but they aren't actually available for anyone to view. Both of them that I'm considering, and I won't mention them here in public because they're redacted, but neither of them seem to be particularly large issues. They don't mention any personal information. I'm wondering, one for example, is about our response to the Scottish Government's speed limit changes. I can't imagine why there's anything in there that should be redacted. I wondered if there was a reason for so many of them being redacted.
Sounds like it might just be a technical issue, perhaps. I don't know. We can take it back.
I'm not sure why they have been redacted, but I think what we'll do is we'll go back, review them, and pick it up. Because if there's reasons, I mean, most of them historically, as you know, have been, published and printed, but we will have a look into that.
Thanks, Claire. I mean, obviously I've seen them, and I genuinely don't think there's anything in them that shouldn't be shared with the public. So welcome your response when it comes. Thank you.
Okay, we will look into that. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attendance today, members and officers. Please have a safe journey home.